Hey, it's Liz, here with the first installment of my series, A Woman's Place, Issues of the 18th Century That Still Hold Relevance Today. While most of my scholarly interest is focused on female writers, for today, we're going to look at the male writer that sparked my interest in the 18th century in particular. For your critical review, I present Samuel Richardson's Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded. Samuel Richardson was a pretty interesting guy. One of the first novelists by most standards, his works were both wildly popular and wildly controversial in his day. He, along with writers like Jonathan Swift, Daniel Defoe, and Eliza Haywood, wrote fictions that sold very well and would eventually lay the groundwork for the novel as an art form. When Richardson was young, he would be commissioned by the ladies of his village to write letters to their beaux. This meant that he got very good both at writing in the voice of a young woman and at writing letters in general. Later in life he would become a printer, which meant that he would lay the type, organize the books, and often write forwards for them. Sometimes he'd even publish his own works, which wasn't nearly as stigmatized back then as it is now. The seed that became Pamela came from an instructional book that Richardson was writing on how to compose letters. In this book he offered the example of a father writing to his daughter, instructing her to return from a morally risky serving position, and the daughter's answering letter promising to return home at once. These two letters really stuck in Richardson's craw and made him wonder what would happen if the girl didn't come home. So he wrote it out. He created Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded, the story of how a young serving girl is kidnapped and brainwashed into marrying her older and much more powerful master. Wait, shit! The story of how a young servant girl benevolently forgives her abuser and becomes his dutiful wife. Fuck. A beautiful love story about how two young people overcome class differences and wed despite disapproval from literally everyone. I guess I'll keep that one. This book sold like crazy when it was first published, and it was both wildly popular and wildly controversial. Let's take a look at why, shall we? Dear mother and father, my poor mistress has died, leaving me to the care of her very handsome son. Oh, I do hope he'll take care of me. I run this estate now, and I'm a pedophile. Nice to meet you. Dear mother and father, my new master is in fact dreadfully wicked, and I fear shall do something horrid to me. Hey, how dare you write mean things about me in your private letters that I steal and read? Get out of my sight. If only I could find someone to help me. Perhaps Mrs. Jervis, the friendly housekeeper, shall be my ally. No, dear, I'm sure you're worried over nothing. Don't get ideas above your station. So, Pamela, the 15-year-old Pamela, are you doing anything after you finish my laundry? Well, maybe you weren't worried over nothing after all. I'll protect you, dear Pamela. Sleep in my bed with me every night until he leaves me alone. Well, if you're going to be a little minx about it, fine. I'll just send you back to your poor family where you live in poor poverty and eat poor dirt. Hooray! Just, you can get in this carriage and, it'll take you right home. Oh, it's so lovely to be on my way home again. Oh, I can't wait to see my mother and father. Perhaps my master isn't so bad after all. But wait! This isn't the way home. Oh, what is this big house with the big wall around it? Oh, no! I'm Mrs. Jukes, the evil housekeeper, and I'm going to keep you here until you decide to just be cool about the whole sexual assault thing. No! That's what you get for being pretty and prudish. Escape! Foiled. Ah, I'm going to rape you right now, Pamela! I'm going to have a fit! Oh, that looks pretty serious. Do you think some women just don't like rape? No. She's obviously faking. Go ahead and rape her anyway. I'm going to do the first decent thing I've done this entire novel and leave this chambermaid unravished. Want to be my mistress? No! Fine, will you marry me then? Well, I am 15 and all alone and vulnerable, and you've really terrorized me for quite some time, and you're pretty cute, so yeah, I guess I'll marry you. Bum bum ba-da, bum bum ba-da, bum bum ba-da ba-da. Stop the wedding! You are a whore and a gold digger, and you may not marry my brother. But we're already married. No, you're a whore! He would never marry you! Hey, take it easy. Why don't you read these diary letters that Pamela wrote? Go ahead and invade her privacy in every way, it's fine. These letters depict me as a conniving rapist, which clearly shows Pamela has no fault. Oh, you're not a whore after all, you sweet thing. You two make such a cute couple. I'll go have all my friends read these letters that depict my brother as a conniving rapist. Welcome to the family, Pamela. Or should I say, the Famela! Ah ha ha ha! Yay! Happy ending! Woo! The sad part is, I'm not really exaggerating, and I actually skipped a lot of screwed up stuff for time's sake. Don't get me wrong, though. This book is remarkable for its era. The fact that Pamela's happy ending is to marry into the upper class is incredibly forward-thinking, as is the fact that it's written from her perspective at all. As a young servant, and a woman to boot, Pamela should have been invisible. But Richardson gave her a voice, and a really powerful one at that. There are things to like about this book, and in fact a lot of people liked it very much. Pamelists would go around carrying copies of the book to show off to each other. People like Aaron Hill would talk about the novel Pamela as if it were a living, breathing woman. And there was even tie-in merchandising, I kid you not. There were paintings, there were fans and tea sets depicting scenes from the book, and there was even spin-offs. People went crazy over Pamela. Some people went crazy in the opposite direction. Anti-Pamelists wrote all kinds of things scorning the work. Henry Fielding wrote Shamela, Eliza Haywood wrote Anti-Pamela, and an anonymous critic created a very scathing piece called Pamela Censured. All of these works would deride the main character of the novel as being a whore, a social climber, or both. Because clearly the traumatized teenager is the problem in this situation. One thing that kept cropping up in contemporary criticism of the novel was the idea of Pamela as a crass seductress, or the novel itself as an instruction book on how to sexually assault your servants. In his article, Novel Panic, Picture and Performance in the Reception of Richardson's Pamela, James Turner finds that flippant criticisms in the vein of Fielding's Shamela find the novel a failure because its hero, Mr. B, is a booby and not an adroit rapist of chambermaids. And with the notable exception of Haywood's Anti-Pamela, basically all of these criticisms carry some implication that the novel is an overtly sexual work and that Pamela behaves herself in an overtly sexual way. But as Turner points out, if a reader sees all of the scenes in Pamela as vivid pictures in their head, the way the author of Pamela Censured fears, that reader will be much more influenced by the explicit terror of the novel than by any eroticism implicit in the text. So where does this obsession with the perceived erotic aspect of Pamela come from? Turner thinks that Richardson himself is complicit in the sexualization of his novel. In his formatter, which he also used as advertising material, Richardson spells out a little too explicitly just what kind of salacious material this fiction will not contain. By taking such care to say what won't be in the book, Richardson creates a kind of negative image of exactly what he claims to avoid. I think that it goes deeper than that, though, and that the underlying mindset which led critics then to sexualize Pamela's fear still permeates society today. Throughout the first half of the novel, Pamela is absolutely terrified, to the point where she has multiple fainting fits and even hallucinations. She is 15 years old at the complete power of her master, and with only one or two relatively powerless allies to help her. And yet, time and time again, across criticism, her fear was read as being sexual. Thinking about the Pamela controversy got me interested in how, when, and why women's fear is portrayed as being somehow sexy or sexual in today's media. The obvious example being Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, in which we see Janet's near orgasmic expression as she steps into the shower, see the water caress her, and then see several nice shots of her wet, naked body as she is stabbed over and over again. This moment is intense. It's startling, it's frightening, and it's so very well done that it has captivated the imagination of audiences and filmmakers alike for generations. And yet, the way Janet is framed is very voyeuristic and very sexualized. She may be dying, but she'll look damn good while she's doing it. Or take a look at a fairly well-regarded example from the anime world. In the third Berserk movie, a female character is restrained and raped by a demon as part of the climax. Her mind is shattered by this event, so it was obviously unwanted and traumatic, but the way it's framed in the moment makes it seem ambiguous, maybe even consensual. Her eyelids flutter sexily, she moans, and her entire body is on display for the audience's viewing pleasure. What is obviously a life-destroying moment for this character becomes a sexy show for those looking on. There's plenty of examples in the world of comics too. The Killing Joke is a work of art, as are most of Alan Moore's creations, but it plays into this trope of women's pain and fear being turned into a turn-on. A female character is shot, paralyzed, stripped, and photographed against her will, but the way she is framed, both by the artwork and by the photographs, the way her body is put on display makes her pain and fears seem more tantalizing than horrifying. And the example you've probably been expecting, 50 Shades of Grey. It's not necessarily as critically acclaimed as my other examples, but it is both incredibly popular and incredibly controversial. It's basically the modern-day Pamela, minus the psychological nuance, the groundbreaking writing style, and the for-its-time progressive message. Throughout the book, Anastasia's pain and fear are portrayed as being sexy kink play, like in chapter 14, where Grey ties her down and has his way with her without necessarily bothering to obtain her consent first, or in chapter 16, where he violently spanks her for rolling her eyes at him, and she obviously doesn't like it, but it's played off as, ooh, it's BDSM, wee! Obviously no, but there are much better and much more in-depth videos on this subject. If you want to see someone really dissecting 50 Shades of Grey, check out the Dom's video series on it. It's really good. Examples of women's fear being portrayed as sexy can be found across media, from film to anime to comics to best-selling trash romance. It doesn't matter if she's in a traumatizing or even life-ending situation. Her pain and her fear only serve to make her sexier, apparently. The 15-year-old girl, the daring thief, the badass, the superhero, the college kid, all of them are stripped of their dignity, their ability to give or deny consent, and even the right to a non-sexualized death. How often have you seen a male corpse portrayed as fuckable? There's a lot to criticize about Pamela, but there's something deeply disturbing to me about how ingrained the question of Pamela's sexuality is in criticism of the novel. The overwhelming feeling of Pamela isn't eroticism, it's fear. And the fact that so many critics of the day boiled it down to just another sexy maid story makes about as much sense as framing your female character's naked body in intimate detail as she is stabbed, shot, or raped. But hey, that's just my interpretation.